In my previous life, my cousin gave me a hairpin that stole my beauty and health. In the end, she hired someone to kill me and took over my life. Before I died, I overheard her conversation with the system. After my death, our lives were completely swapped. When I opened my eyes again, I immediately handed the hairpin to the blind ant at the village entrance. My head throbbed as if it were about to explode. Not the dull ache of a hangover, but the sensation of something cold and hard chiseling into the back of my skull. Thick, rust-scented liquid smeared over my eyes, clogged my ears, and finally trickled into the corner of my mouth, salty and bitter. I tried to scream, but my throat could only produce a wheezing, airless sound. Before my eyes were distorted, flickering lights and shadows, along with several blurred, menacing faces, and there was my cousin, Su Wanqing, standing a few steps away, wearing the Zhangyan Cheongsam I had bought just last month but never dared to wear. The cheongsam I had saved up for an entire year with my writing earnings. Its cut now perfectly hugged her slender, graceful figure. Her face, under the dim streetlight, was breathtakingly beautiful yet chillingly cold. That had once been my face, or rather, that should have been my face. "Hurry up and clean this up," she said, her voice still soft as ever, like a knife dipped in honey. Just like every call I had heard from her over the past 20 years. Wan, don't blame your cousin, blame your own unfortunate fate. Look at your face now, this broken body. Living is just suffering. Let your cousin help you find release. I wanted to lunge at her, to scratch off even a piece of her skin with my nails, but I couldn't move. My bones were broken. I didn't know how many. System, I heard her say softly, with a tone of almost coquettish satisfaction, confirm whether Lin Wan's vital signs are about to disappear. How far along is our life-swapping progress? Then, a cold, utterly emotionless mechanical voice clearly pierced my ears. It didn't seem to come from outside but rather echoed directly in my dying mind. Target life form Lin Wan is critically endangered. Plundering progress. Beauty 98%, health 99%, fortune 97%. Final stage of life swapping initiated. Once her vital signs completely vanish, host Su Wanqing will fully inherit all of Lin Wan's social connections, potential opportunities, and future destiny. Countdown. So that's how it is. It turns out my lifelong frailty and frequent illnesses weren't innate. The rapid dulling and yellowing of my hair after puberty, my rough, acne-prone skin, my increasingly blurry vision, it wasn't just a phase of growing up. Every time I got close to Su Wanqing, whenever that faint, competitive instinct of a young girl stirred in my heart, I'd immediately have bad luck, tripping, losing money, being misunderstood, or missing opportunities. It wasn't that I had poor luck, it was because of her, because of that ghostly thing in her head. 3, 2, 1. Su Wanqing's beautiful face bloomed into an incredibly radiant, utterly satisfied smile, a smile like the deadliest poison, searing into the last shred of my consciousness. Congratulations, host, you have completely become Lin Wan. Wan, what are you spacing out for? Did you hear what your cousin said to you? A sickly sweet voice, carrying a familiar, barely perceptible sense of superiority, wormed its way into my ears again. I jolted violently and opened my eyes. No cold floor, no searing pain in the back of my head, no pervasive smell of blood. Before me were bright windows, an old but clean desk piled with senior year review materials. Sunlight streamed through the glass, casting warm, dappled light on the desktop, desk motes dancing lazily in the beams. I looked down at my hands. The skin wasn't particularly fair, even a bit dry. My nails were somewhat rough from years of housework, but they were whole, strong, and warm. I'm back. My heart hammered wildly in my chest, threatening to shatter my ribs, a bone-chilling hatred and a near-collapsing, overwhelming joy of having narrowly escaped death intertwined into a surging wave, instantly drowning me. I clenched my teeth hard against the soft flesh inside my cheek until I tasted a hint of blood, barely suppressing the scream or sob that was about to tear from my throat. Wan, the voice drew closer. I lifted my eyes to look at the person standing beside my desk. Su Wanqing, 19-year-old Su Wanqing. She wore a brand-new floral dress that accentuated her fair skin and the graceful figure of a young woman. Her face, compared to the stunningly beautiful 26-year-old version, still held a touch of youthful innocence, but her eyes curved into crescents, and the corners of her mouth naturally tilted slightly upward, giving the impression of a faint smile even when silent. The kind of face that would make elders praise. What a thoughtful girl, only I knew that. Beneath those gently curved brows and eyes lay a blade steeped in poison. At that moment, she was holding something out to me, a hair clip, made of plastic, crudely crafted, the kind that would sell for no more than 5 yuan at a street stall, yet its design was unique, a butterfly poised to take flight. Its wings were adorned with cheap yet brightly colored sequins, reflecting a somewhat glaring light under the sun. My gaze froze on that hair clip. This was it. In my previous life, it was at This very moment that Su Wanqing had stumbled upon the slightly worn but distinctive hair clip among the discarded items at the accessory shop where she worked, thinking it suited me perfectly, she had secretly kept it and given it to me. How moved I had been back then. My family was poor, my parents had passed away early, and I lived with my stingy uncle and aunt. My cousin Su Wanqing was the only light in my bleak youth. She would always give me her old clothes, share half of the apple she couldn't bear to eat from school with me, and comfort me softly when my aunt scolded me. This hair clip was the first sparkling accessory that truly belonged to me as a young girl. I treasured it dearly, wearing it with pride, only to gradually lose my luster, my health, and everything I had over the next 10 years, until I even lost my life at her hands. She and that damn system had drained me dry, swapping my life for theirs. I mentioned it to you before. I think this butterfly design suits you perfectly. Your hair is so dark, it would look lovely pinned by your ear. Su Wanqing smiled warmly, extending the hair clip toward me once more. I watched as I slowly, very slowly, forced a smile onto my face. The mirror was right across from the desk, and in it, I saw my 16-year-old self. The smile was stiff and strange, my eyes like frozen rivers. Yet the curve of my lips struggled to mimic the once overwhelmed and delighted expression from before. Really, cousin, I heard my own voice, dry but straining to sound cheerful. What a beautiful hair clip. I reached up my hand, not immediately taking it, but pausing in midair, my fingertips almost brushing against the cold plastic butterfly. The tension in Su Wanqing's eyes faded, replaced by a smug, disdainful relaxation. Look at this foolish girl, still so easy to please. Just as her fingers were about to loosen, about to drop the hair clip into my palm, I suddenly flipped my wrist, my fingertips lightly grazing the edge of the clip before naturally wrapping around her wrist instead. Cousin, you're so kind, I said with a smile, feeling the delicate, cool skin of her wrist. But lately, my scalp has been really sensitive and itchy. Auntie said it might be because of the cheap laundry detergent she uses, and she told me not to put anything unnecessary on my head for now. I wore just the right amount of regret and distress, my eyes brimming with sincerity. Su Wanqing was taken aback, clearly not expecting me to refuse, according to the script she and the system had in mind. I should have been overjoyed, taken it immediately, put it on, and then bound it to start the plundering. It was just a hair clip, after all. What's the big deal? She tried to insist, her smile looking a bit forced. No, I can't. I let go of her hand, waving mine repeatedly, my tone affectionate yet stubborn. If my cousin gives me something, I have to treasure it properly. If I wear it now and my allergy gets worse, or if the hair clip gets dirty or lost, I'd be heartbroken. I'll put it away for now, and once my scalp is better, I'll wear it every day, I said, with lightning speed. I snatched the hair clip from her fingertips. The cool touch instantly spread to my fingers, sending a faint shiver through me, but I gripped it tightly, as if holding a snake by its neck. I didn't immediately put it in a drawer or pocket. Instead, I held it between my fingers, raised it to the sunlight, pretending to admire it carefully while staying fully alert with all my senses. No mechanical voice sounded in my head. Good. It seemed this wretched thing required voluntary wearing or some kind of trigger condition to bind. Mere contact wasn't enough. The smile on Su Wanqing's face faded completely, a trace of imperceptible gloom and irritation flashing in her eyes, but she quickly composed herself, her tone carrying a hint of reproach. Suit yourself, taking kindness for ill intent. By the way, Mom wants you to gather the firewood by the village entrance this afternoon and stack it in the backyard. The weather forecast says it's going to rain in a couple of days. Got it, cousin? I nodded obediently, but inwardly sneered. Here it comes, the same orders as in my previous life. The pile of firewood at the village entrance was left behind by Uncle Lee's family, who had moved away earlier, damp and heavy. Last time, I toiled away all afternoon, my back aching so much I could barely straighten it, only to be scolded by my aunt for being slow when I returned. Meanwhile, Su Wanqing probably went off to hang out with her friends from town again. Su Wanqing seemed unwilling to linger any longer, offering a few more empty words like study hard before turning and walking away. Then came my aunt's raised voice from downstairs, telling Qingqing to come back early if she was going out again. Slowly, I let out a long, pent-up breath of foul air from my chest. My hand, clutching the hairpin, trembled slightly, my nails turning white from the force. It wasn't fear, it was excitement, a cold, sharp, venomous excitement. Su Wanqing, system, I'm back. Everything you took from me, I'll make you pay back with interest, piece by piece. I lowered my head and looked again at the hairpin in my hand. The plastic butterfly shimmered under the sunlight, its sequins flashing with a cheap yet eerie glow. This wasn't just a tool for plunder, it was a bomb, one that connected Su Wanqing and that system. Simply throwing it away wouldn't do, that would be letting them off too easily. Who knows if the system had some kind of retrieval mechanism, or if Su Wanqing could sense the hairpin's location through the system, retrieve it, and use it to harm others, or even target me again and ruin me. I tried bending the plastic with force. It was fairly sturdy, and I wasn't sure if violent destruction might trigger some uncontrollable consequence. That system sounded either highly advanced or highly fantastical. Caution was key, so the best approach, an idea flashed through my mind like lightning in the dark, suddenly illuminating my thoughts. At the entrance of the village, there isn't just firewood, there's also a person. In the low, dilapidated adobe house closest to the river at the eastern end of the village lives a woman we all call Granny Chin. In truth, she might not be very old, perhaps not even 50, but the hardships of life and the torment of illness have made her look like an old crone. Most importantly, she is blind, though not from birth. It's said that many years ago, after a high fever, she lost her sight forever. Her husband died early, and she has no children, surviving on meager village relief and occasionally doing odd jobs for others. She is as silent as a stone by the river. In my past understanding, she was a pitiful figure, a dim and blurry part of the village's background, but now it's different, a blind, lonely woman, almost cut off from the outside world, overlooked and even forgotten by everyone. If beauty holds no meaning for her, if health is a luxury she doesn't even know the source of, if her luck is so low it's almost non-existent, what could the system possibly plunder from her? Would it even be able to digest it? More importantly, if the system were to bind with such a host, what expressions would Su Wanqing and that hidden system wear? A bold, almost insane plan instantly took shape in my mind. My heart pounded wildly with excitement, blood rushing to my eardrums with a roaring sound. This wasn't just a simple diversion of trouble, it was a probe, a counterattack, and a risky move to secure an unimaginable possibility for that poor woman, and perhaps for myself as well. I knew there were risks. I didn't know what would happen to Granny Chin, but no matter what, it was better than keeping this hairpin in the hands of Su Wanqing and me. I quickly tucked the hairpin into a hidden pouch I had sewn inside my clothes, a secret pocket I made to hide my savings and important little things, unknown to my aunt and cousin. Then I changed into an old work jacket, took a deep breath, and pulled open the door. Downstairs, my aunt was chopping pig feet in the kitchen, the rhythmic thuds accompanied by her habitual grumbling, complaining about the price of pork, the damp firewood, and the hardships of life. My uncle had probably gone to the town tea house to play cards again. This house had never felt like home to me. In the past, I would secretly feel sad about it, but now, only a cold indifference remained in my heart. Silently, I passed through the main hall, picked up the bamboo basket and hemp rope behind the door, and walked out of this suffocating home. The afternoon sun was a bit scorching. I walked along the village path that felt both familiar and strange in my memory, my gaze sweeping over the low houses, the children playing, and the elderly chatting. Everything was vivid and real. I had truly returned, back to before the tragedy began. But I didn't go directly to the place where the firewood was stored. Instead, I turned a corner and headed toward the solitary adobe house by the river at the eastern end of the village. The closer I got to the river, the sparser the population became. The adobe house looked even more dilapidated than I remembered, with peeling walls revealing the yellow earth mixed with straw beneath. The small window was covered with torn plastic sheeting, and the yard was empty, save for a few stubborn clumps of wild grass growing here and there. The door was slightly ajar. I stood outside the yard, steadied myself, and then gently knocked on the crooked wooden door. "Is Granny Chin home?" I tried to make my voice sound calm and harmless. A faint rustling sound came from inside. After a while, the door was pulled open a crack, and a thin woman wearing a gray cloth shirt covered in patches appeared in the doorway. Her hair was gray, dry, and hastily tied up with a wooden hairpin. Her face was covered in deep wrinkles, and her complexion was dull. What stood utmost were her eyes, cloudy, lifeless, and unfocused as they looked in my direction. "Who is it?" Her voice was hoarse, carrying the sluggishness of someone who hadn't spoken to others for a long time. "Granny, it's me, Wan from the Lin family in the west of the village." I took a step forward, my tone respectful, as befitting a younger person. "My aunt sent me to collect the firewood left by Uncle Lee's family over here. I was passing by your place and noticed how clean your yard is. I was wondering if I could trouble you for a bowl of water to drink. Would that be all right?" Granny Chin seemed to pause for a moment, perhaps because it had been too long since anyone had actively spoken to her. She remained silent for a few seconds before stepping aside. "Come in," she said. "The water jar is in the corner. Help yourself." I thanked her, stepping into the dimly lit room, which was almost devoid of furniture. I was met with a musty scent that mingled the aromas of herbs and damp Earth. I walked over to the water jar, picked up a ladle, and slowly drank half a scoop of water. As I did, my eyes quickly and carefully scanned the interior of the room. It was simple but unexpectedly tidy. Though the items were worn and old, everything was neatly arranged, revealing that even in the darkness, the owner was striving to maintain order in her life. Granny, you live alone, and with your eyesight being poor, you've kept everything so clean, I said sincerely, setting down the ladle. Granny Chin groped her way to a low stool and sat down. At my words, her expressionless face seemed to soften slightly. I'm used to it, she said. When you can't see, your hands can't afford to be idle. I walked over to her, crouched down, and looked into her vacant eyes, softening my voice further. Granny, I have something I'd like to give you. Give me. Her empty eyes turned toward me, filled with confusion and a hint of instinctive wariness, for someone nearly forgotten by the world. The first reaction to receiving a gift was not joy but unease. Yes, I pulled the butterfly hair clip from my hidden pocket. The cool, plastic touch felt incredibly reassuring at that moment. I took her thin, withered hand and gently placed the hair clip in her palm. It's a hair clip, shaped like a butterfly, and it sparkles. My cousin gave it to me, but it doesn't look good on me, and it doesn't suit me either. I think it should belong to someone who needs it more. Granny Chen's hand trembled slightly, her bony fingers slowly closed around the object, and she began to explore it carefully, from the edges of the butterfly's wings to the sparkling sequins attached to it, gently tracing its shape and texture. A hair clip, she murmured. He murmured the words again, his voice carrying a distant and vague nostalgia. When I was young, I also liked these shiny little things. The corner of his mouth lifted ever so slightly, like a faded old dream of something beautiful. Now is the time. My heart raced wildly as I held my breath and whispered, Grandma Chin, let me help you try it on. Okay, it will suit you perfectly. This was an invitation, a gentle yet irresistible nudge. I needed him to accept, to allow the wearing. Grandma Chin remained silent. Time ticked by second, and the room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat and the faint sound of flowing water from the riverbank. Finally, she gave an almost imperceptible nod, her voice so low it was barely audible. Okay. Carefully, I picked up the hairpin from her palm and stood beside her, lifting a strand of her gray, dry hair near her temple. Her hair was sparse but clean. Gently, I pinned the hair clip behind her ear, adjusting its position so that the cheap plastic butterfly rested among her gray locks. The moment the hairpin was secured, I abruptly took a step back, every muscle in my body tensing as I stared intently at Grandma Chin. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, nothing happened. No light, no sound, no strange changes of any kind. Grandma Chin remained quietly seated on the low stool, the butterfly sequins on the hairpin reflecting a faint glimmer in the dim light seeping through the doorway. She raised her hand and gently touched the hairpin behind her ear, her face still a picture of silent confusion. My tense nerves relaxed slightly, but confusion and a hint of uncertainty surged within me. Had I guessed wrong? Did binding require more specific conditions, or was the system only targeting young women? Just as my mind was racing, Granny Chin suddenly let out a faint, sob-like sound. Her hand, which had been touching the hairpin, froze. Then, slowly, very slowly, she moved that hand in front of her eyes. Her empty, cloudy, unfocused eyes were now fixed on her own withered fingers. Her eyelashes trembled violently, like a frozen lake struck by a massive rock. Cracks spreading from the deepest part, her lips quivered, and indistinct syllables escaped her throat. I held my breath, my heart seeming to stop as I stared at her, wide-eyed and unblinking. Then I saw a murky tear roll unexpectedly from her dry, well-like red eye, tracing a path down the deep, knife-carved wrinkles before falling to the ground with a soft plop, leaving a small, dark stain on the floor. Could she see, or was she just sensing the light? Granny, I called out tentatively, my voice barely a whisper. Granny Chin didn't answer, she just stared blankly at her hand, at the patch of light streaming in from the doorway, at the dust motes dancing in the beam, at this world she had been separated from for who knows how many years, a world that had long since blurred into darkness in her memory. More tears welled up silently, washing over her weather-beaten face. She didn't cry out loud, but that silent, surging flood of tears tightened my heart more than any wailing could. I knew something had changed. The butterfly I had personally pinned in her hair had perhaps truly begun to flutter its cheap yet fateful wings. Standing in that dim, dilapidated room, watching the old woman's silent tears, what churned within me wasn't the satisfaction of a plan's initial success, but a complex, ice and fire intermingling of emotions. The first step of the gamble was right, but what kind of storm would it stir up next? Su Wanqing, and that damned system in her head. Can you feel it? I quietly stepped back, then back again, finally slipping out of the adobe house without a sound and gently closing the crooked wooden door. Inside, a world of darkness had quietly been shattered. Outside, the afternoon sun still burned hot, and my path of rebirth had just begun. I lifted my head and looked toward the direction of my home in the west of the village, my gaze gradually cooling. Good, the gift has been delivered. Do you like this surprise? Returning from Granny Chen's place, I felt somewhat dazed, not out of fear, but from an indescribable tension and excitement. I knew I had done something that could change everything. Yet also carried unknown risks. That hairpin, that system, was like a stone thrown into a stagnant pond. Ripples had already begun to spread, though for now, the undercurrents beneath the surface remained unclear. For the rest of the afternoon, I forced myself to act like a genuine 16-year-old girl and went to tidy up the pile of firewood at the village entrance, the heavy logs pressed down on my shoulders, the rough hemp rope digging into the flesh of my palms, bringing a sharp, real pain. This pain reassured me, reminding me of the reality of the moment. Sweat soaked through the old clothes on my back, sticking clammily to my skin, while the scent of wood and damp earth filled my nostrils. As I mechanically moved the firewood, my mind kept replaying the moment Granny Chen shed tears at the end. Were those tears because she had regained her sight, or was it something else? The binding of the system. Was it a blessing or a curse for her? What would the system plunder from her? Nearly destitute blind old woman, what could it possibly covet? Her vitality, the little life she had left. This thought sent a chill through me, but I quickly hardened my heart. It wasn't me who had harmed her, it was Su Wanqing and that system. They were the source. By giving her the hairpin, I had at least disrupted Su Wanqing's direct path to plundering me. As for Granny Chen, I gritted my teeth inwardly. If there was a chance, if it was possible, I would find a way to make it up to her. The firewood piled up to half the backyard. My aunt came out to take a look and, for once, didn't scold me for slacking off. She just frowned and muttered, "How are we supposed to burn all this firewood?" Before turning back to the kitchen, she had never cared much about whether I lived or died, as long as the work got done. As dusk began to settle, Su Wanqing returned. I was sitting on a small stool in the backyard, washing the dirty clothes of my aunt's family and myself under the last glimmer of daylight. The well water was icy and biting. I heard the front door open, followed by my aunt's voice instantly turning warm and enthusiastic. "Chin, you're back. Did you have fun? Are you hungry? I saved some food for you. It's still warm in the pot." It was all right, just a bit tired. Su Wanqing's voice carried over, tinged with an exaggerated weariness and a hint of barely noticeable irritation. I pricked up my ears, slowing the scrubbing on the washboard in my hands. She didn't head straight to the kitchen. Instead, her footsteps echoed a few times in the main room, as if she were hesitating about something. Then, I heard her walking toward me. I immediately lowered my head, focusing intently on scrubbing my uncle's muddy work pants in the basin, the water splashing noisily. "Wan," Su Wanqing's voice sounded above me. I looked up, sweat and water droplets clinging to my face, my eyes weary yet tinged with a timid, ingratiating look. "Cousin, you're back." She stood under the eaves of the back door, not fully stepping inside. Her gaze swept over my face, then glanced at the small mountain of laundry piled up. She pursed her lips slightly and said, "You've worked hard." The words came out dry and insincere. Her eyes seemed to drift unintentionally toward my head. My hair, damp with sweat from the work, clung messily to my temples and neck, tied back with the plainest black elastic band. Without any adornment, her brow furrowed almost imperceptibly, a flicker of suspicion and anxiety quickly passing through the depths of her eyes. "He was looking for that hairpin." I sneered inwardly, but on the surface, I showed a hint of unease and spoke up first with a touch of regret. "Cousin, I'm sorry. The hairpin you gave me, I pinned it to my collar this afternoon when I went to gather firewood. It must have fallen off when I bent over. I looked for it afterward but couldn't find it." My voice trailed off, sounding genuinely dejected. Su Wanqing's expression changed instantly, but it wasn't anger over me losing something. It was a more complicated look, shock, disbelief, panic, and a trace of almost instinctive fear that was forcibly suppressed. "Lost." His voice rose slightly before he immediately caught himself, forcing it back down, though his tone remained tense. "How could it be lost? Didn't you say you'd keep it safe?" He took a step forward, his sharp gaze fixed on my face as if searching for any sign of deception. I shrank back, lowered my eyes, and unconsciously twisted the damp hem of my clothes, perfectly playing the part of a girl who had done something wrong and was afraid of being scolded. I just wanted to wear it. I was happy to have something you gave me. Cousin, I didn't expect. Please don't be angry. I'll look for it again tomorrow. Maybe it fell into the firewood pile or the grass." I stole a glance and saw her chest rising and falling slightly, her lips pressed so tightly they turned pale, and her fingers curling Unconsciously, she was trying hard to control her emotions. Did the system give her some kind of feedback, like target lost, binding failed, or some other warning? After several seconds, she let out a long sigh and forced a stiff smile onto her face, waving her hand dismissively. Forget it. It's just a cheap little trinket. If it's lost, it's lost. Don't bother looking for it. It's dark out. You might trip and hurt yourself. I'll find something else for you later, she said this last part somewhat absent-mindedly, her gaze drifting. Thank you, cousin, I whispered, though inside, I was on high alert. She didn't press for details. That wasn't right. Given Su Wanqing's personality, even if she didn't care much, she would have at least pretended to scold me or lecture me for carelessly losing her gift. Her current magnanimity felt more like a distracted dismissal. Without another word, she turned and hurried back into the house. I heard her exchange a few words with my aunt, her tone sharp and impatient, as if she couldn't even be bothered to answer when my aunt asked if she had eaten. She went straight upstairs. The dull thud of her door closing echoed, and I slowly stopped scrubbing the clothes, staring at the murky soapy water in the basin. A cold smile tugged at the corner of my lips. It seemed the surprise of the delivered gift was already starting to take effect. In the following days, I continued to play my part as a quiet, hard-working high school senior preparing for the college entrance exams, all while secretly keeping an eye on both Su Wanqing and Granny Chen. Su Wanqing was clearly not herself. She had become unusually irritable, although she had always been spoiled. At home, especially in front of her parents, she knew how to act sweet and obedient, always with a honeyed tongue, but these past few days, she would fly into a rage over the slightest thing, complaining that her mother's cooking was too salty or too bland, that her father's TV was too loud, or that my footsteps were too heavy. The smallest issue could make her storm off and slam her bedroom door. Her complexion didn't look good either, not the kind of sickly pallor from illness, but a faint, ashen gray, as if covered by an invisible layer of dust. Her once rosy, glowing complexion, which everyone had envied, seemed to have dulled considerably, and faint dark circles had appeared under her eyes. Even though she secretly tried to cover them up with expensive face cream, the kind her mother wouldn't even splurge on, it was still noticeable. Auntie whispered to Uncle, wondering if their daughter was about to start her period or if something had happened at school. Given her foul mood, Uncle grumbled impatiently, "Girls are always so complicated. You deal with her. She's about to take the college entrance exams and still acts so immature." They would never know that their precious daughter might be harboring a hungry or malfunctioning monster inside her body. Meanwhile, every day on my way to and from school, as I passed by the riverbank on the east side of the village, I would deliberately slow my pace and steal a distant, seemingly casual glance at that earthen house. Subtle changes were also taking place. First, Granny Chen had started venturing outside, something truly earth-shattering for someone who had been blind for years and almost completely isolated from the world. On the first day, I only noticed her door was open. She stood at the doorway, groping her way, her face tilted upward, motionless, as if gazing at the sky or simply feeling the sunlight. Her posture was stiff, marked by the timidity that comes from living in darkness for so long. On the second day, I saw her leaning against the wall, moving at an excruciatingly slow pace out of the courtyard. She stopped under the old willow tree by the riverbank, leaning against the trunk, still with her face tilted upward. This time, she raised her hand, as if trying to touch the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves. On the third day, she made her way to the stone steps by the river, crouched down, and dipped her hand into the cold river water. For a long, long time, she didn't speak to anyone. Villagers who occasionally saw her would cast a surprised glance and murmur among themselves, "Why is Blind Chen out? It's kind of creepy," before quickly losing interest in someone so marginalized. Her changes didn't stir much of a ripple, but I knew the transformation went far deeper. Her back seemed a little straighter, not a sudden, dramatic change, but like a faint yet resilient sprout slowly emerging from withered branches. The heavy, lifeless despair and numbness that had shrouded her for so long were gradually dissipating. Even though her clothes were still tattered and her complexion remained sallow, there was a different aura about her. What truly startled me was that on the evening of the fourth day, I deliberately took a detour and passed behind his house. It was an even more secluded path, with the rear window of the adobe house set high and small, a corner of the plastic sheet covering it torn. Holding my breath, I quietly approached and peered inside through that torn corner. There was no light in the room. She probably still hadn't found where the lamp and matches were kept, so it was quite dim, but I saw Granny Chen sitting on the only low stool, her back to the window, holding something in her hands, carefully and repeatedly stroking it. It was the butterfly hairpin, the Last light of day outside seeped through the hole and the cracks in the door, sparingly casting a few rays onto the cheap sequins of the hairpin, which, in the dim light, reflected a faint yet stubborn gleam. It shone on her gray, dry hair and on her focused profile. She was looking, using her newly restored, perhaps still blurry, vision and those calloused yet incredibly gentle hands. Then I saw her raise her other hand and gently brush the back of it against her cheek, a gesture carrying a long, lost, subconscious feminine concern for appearance. I abruptly pulled back, leaning against the cold earthen wall, my heart pounding wildly in my chest. Had the plundering begun? What had the system taken from her, and what had it given her? Was it just her eyesight, and was this restored vision merely bait for a deeper, more cruel plundering? I didn't know, but I was certain that Granny Chin, this woman forgotten by everyone, was being drawn into a bizarre vortex she couldn't possibly comprehend, and I was the one who had pushed her into it. A heavy sense of guilt, mixed with wariness of the unknown, weighed heavily on my heart. School let out early on Friday afternoon, and I deliberately lingered in town for a while, browsing and exchanging 2 cheap supplementary books at the old bookstore. It was a good excuse for returning late. By the time I got back to the village, it was almost dark. Just as I reached the old locust tree at the village entrance, I saw Su Wanqing. He wasn't alone. Standing opposite him was a young man, pushing a 28-inch bicycle. The man was tall, wearing a faded blue work uniform, his back to me so I couldn't see his face, but his posture was upright. Su Wanqing was looking up at him as she spoke, holding the end of her braid in her hand, her face wearing the familiar, deliberately softened smile filled with admiration and shyness. The evening light cast a gentle glow around her. She had clearly dressed up today, wearing a water-red dacron blouse that made her skin appear even fairer, though upon closer inspection, traces of foundation were visible. Her hair was neatly combed without a single strand out of place, yet, at that moment, my heart felt as if it had been gripped by an icy hand, nearly stopping. That figure, even after 10 years, even just a silhouette, I would never mistake it. The name Xinxinghe was like a rusty, blunt knife, tearing open a fresh, bloody wound in my long-scabbed heart. In my previous life, he was one of the few people who had genuinely offered me warmth and kindness. He was a young technician at the town's agricultural machinery station, educated, upright, and carrying a quiet, solitary pride. We met when my bicycle broke down while I was delivering something to my uncle in town, and he happened to pass by and helped me fix it. Later, whenever we occasionally ran into each other, he would greet me gently, ask about my studies, and even give me old magazines he had finished reading. That was a tiny glimmer of light I secretly treasured. During my bleak youth, I never dared to hope for anything more, treating it as a distant and beautiful symbol, but Su Wanqing knew about it too. More than once, she had mentioned Xinxinghe in front of me with a tone mixed with jealousy and disdain, saying he was nothing but a pretty face, his family dirt poor, and he was too quiet and dull. Only someone as inexperienced as me would think he was any good. Later, after I was robbed of my hairpin, left haggard and ugly, while Su Wanqing grew increasingly radiant, Xinxinghe's gaze toward me shifted from initial gentleness to pity, and finally to distant politeness. Meanwhile, Su Wanqing began to appear around him intentionally or unintentionally, showcasing her beauty and vivacity. Before my death in my previous life, I vaguely heard that Su Wanqing had gone to the provincial capital, living my life and wearing my appearance, and seemed to have gotten involved with a well-connected boyfriend. As for what happened to Xinxinghe afterward, I never found out. Had she already set her sights on him this early, or was this just a chance encounter? I stood frozen in place, my hands and feet icy cold, unsure whether to step forward or immediately hide. Just then, Xinxinghe seemed to say something, nodded, and then turned to leave with his bicycle. As he turned, he noticed me standing in the shadow of the locust tree. His gaze met mine. He had very clear eyes, which appeared especially bright in the twilight. His face showed no particular expression, but his eyes lingered on my face for a moment, as if recognizing me, before he gave an almost imperceptible nod in acknowledgement. There was no disgust, no pity, only calm recognition. Su Wanqing also followed his gaze. The moment she saw me, the delicate smile on her face instantly faded, and a flicker of annoyance at being disturbed, along with a deeper, colder scrutiny, flashed through her eyes. She looked me up and down, her gaze lingering especially on my empty hair and unremarkable clothes. Wanwan just got back, she spoke up, her voice returning to its usual sweetness but with a barely noticeable tension. Went to the bookstore again, studying so hard. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to move, stepping out of the shadows, and whispered with my head lowered. I bought 2 reference books. I also nodded slightly in Xinxinghe's direction, not daring to meet his eyes. My throat tight. Xinxinghe didn't say anything, just glanced at us. once more, then swung his long leg over his bicycle, dinged the bell once, and rode off toward the town. The wheels rolled over the dirt road, kicking up fine dust. Only when his figure disappeared into the twilight did Su Wanqing finally look away. The smile on her face vanished completely as she walked up to me, standing very close, lowering her voice with a sharp, questioning tone. "Lin Wan, tell me the truth." My heart skipped a beat. That hairpin, her eyes fixed on me, not missing the slightest change in my expression. "Where exactly did you lose it? Did you give it to someone?" I lifted my head to meet her scrutinizing gaze, my eyes filled with just the right amount of confusion and helplessness. "Give it away? Cousin, what are you talking about? A hairpin? Who would I give it to?" I deliberately let a hint of grievance and the urgency of being wronged seep into my voice. Who in the village around my age would even care for such a little trinket? Besides, it was a gift from you, cousin. How could I just give it away? I really just lost it by accident. Honestly, I felt awful about it for a long time. As I spoke, I lowered my head, my fingers habitually twisting together, acting out the remorseful and self-reproaching demeanor of a girl who had carelessly lost a precious gift, so convincingly that I almost believed it myself. Su Wanqing didn't speak, just stared at me intently with eyes that now seemed unusually deep and penetrating. Her gaze swept over my face, my eyes, every subtle expression like a searchlight, judging and weighing. The air seemed to freeze, the leaves of the old locust tree at the village entrance rustled softly in the evening breeze, and a few distant barks of dogs only made the silence between us more suffocating. I could feel my heart pounding heavily in my chest, one beat after another, but I knew even more clearly that I couldn't show any fear now. The slightest waver would give her leverage. I had no idea what kind of perception abilities that system had granted her. Finally, the sharpness in her eyes slowly faded, replaced once again by the familiar, slightly impatient, and artificial mask. She let out a soft hum, reached up to smooth a non-existent stray hair by her temple, and her tone returned to its usual casual, slightly superior air. All right, I was just asking. Look how nervous you are. If it's lost, it's lost." "I already said it wasn't anything valuable." She paused, her gaze drifting in the direction Xinxingha had left before quickly snapping back to me. When it landed on my face, it carried a hint of a knowing, almost mocking smile. "That was Technician Xin just now. My bicycle chain came off, and he happened to pass by and helped me fix it." Her voluntary explanation only made it seem more like she was trying to cover something up. I cooperatively showed just the right amount of surprise and understanding. "Oh, it was Brother Shen. He really is a nice person." "Nice? What's so nice about him?" Su Wanqing pouted, but a hint of smugness flickered in the corners of her eyes and brows. "What a blockhead, taking forever to get a single word out. Let's go. It's time to head home. Mom must be getting anxious." She turned and walked ahead, her steps quick, her back radiating a sense of irritation. I followed silently behind, watching her slender figure in the twilight, yet the layer of ice in my heart only thickened. She's suspicious, even though I managed to brush it off for now. The seed of doubt has been planted in her mind. That system must have given her some kind of hint or unease. I need to be even more careful. At the same time, I have to speed up my plan. Just moving the hairpin and blocking its direct plundering of me is only the first step. Passive defense is never enough. I need to figure out how that system operates, find its weakness, and then take the initiative. The opportunity is coming faster than I imagined. And it's even more bizarre. After that day, Su Wanqing's anxiety only grew. She began experiencing frequent physical discomfort, headaches, inexplicable fatigue, and her complexion worsened. That ashen, defeated look became even more pronounced, to the point where even my aunt started worrying and urged her to see a doctor. Su Wanqing always brushed it off, saying it was probably due to academic stress and poor sleep, but I knew better. Once, I got up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. As I passed her tightly shut door, I faintly heard suppressed, painful moans from inside, along with her low, fear-filled whispers. "No, not any less. System, think of a way to find it. We must find a new one, a new target to plunder." I tiptoed back to my room, leaning against the cold door, my heart pounding like a drum. It seems that without me as its bound host, the system can't obtain what it needs from Granny Chin, or what it gets is far from enough, and has started to backlash against Su Wanqing herself. Is this what they call a cornered beast? Fighting back, on the other hand, the changes in Granny Chin were becoming more and more noticeable. She was no longer content with just staying by the river. She began trying to slowly venture into the village. Most of the time, she still walked silently along the base of walls, immediately lowering her head and quickening her pace whenever she encountered someone, like a startled rabbit. But her very presence had become a minor oddity in the village. "Have you noticed? Old Blind Chin seems to Be able to see a bit now. Nonsense. How could someone blind for so many years suddenly recover? I saw her yesterday, staring at the eggplants in Granny Lee's vegetable garden for a long time. Her eyes didn't look completely blind. It's strange. Her complexion seems a bit better lately. Still thin, but not as lifeless. Could it be she's been possessed? Or maybe she found some folk remedy? The whispers were everywhere. But they were all behind her back. No one actually went up to ask Granny Chin. After all, to most people, an old, blind, widowed woman's well-being was irrelevant, but I noticed one detail. Every time Granny Chin went out, that butterfly hairpin was neatly pinned in her bun, even though her hair remained gray and dry, and even though the hairpin was cheap and simple, she seemed to treat it as some kind of important symbol or talisman. This only deepened my unease. The hairpin is the system's antenna. The more Granny Chin relies on it, the more she cherishes it. Does that mean the system's erosion and binding of her are growing stronger? The system gave her eyesight, and perhaps other subtle positive changes, like a slightly better complexion, a bit more vitality. Is it all just bait, like fishing, to make her more willing to be bound, paving the way for deeper, crueler plundering later on? I urgently need to learn more about the system. Asking Su Wanqing directly would be suicide. Observing Granny Chin is too risky, and she likely doesn't even realize what's happening herself. Just then, Xinxingha appeared by chance once again, this time not at the village entrance but outside the town's only post office. I had just picked up the money order for my uncle and, looking up, saw him standing at the foot of the post office steps, leaning on his bicycle as if waiting for someone. He wasn't wearing his work clothes today, instead sporting a slightly worn gray jacket that made his shoulders look broad and his posture even more upright. When he saw me, he paused briefly, then nodded in acknowledgement. I hesitated for a moment, tightened my grip on the money order in my hand, mustered my courage, and walked down the steps to stand before him. Shin, brother Shin, I said, my voice a bit dry. He responded, his gaze calm as he looked at me, picking something up, getting a money order for my uncle. I waved the piece of paper in my hand and found a topic to start the conversation. Brother Shin, are you here to mail a letter too, or are you waiting for a friend? He was concise, his gaze sweeping over me and pausing for a moment before suddenly asking, have you been doing well lately? The question felt a bit abrupt, as I wasn't particularly close to him. My heart stirred, and I raised my eyes, trying to make my expression look like that of a girl my age, flustered and shy at the concern from an outstanding member of the opposite sex. I lowered my voice and said, I'm okay, it's just that schoolwork is a bit heavy. And there's a lot going on at home. I paused, as if unintentionally bringing up my cousin, Su Wanqing. Brother Shin, do you remember her? She hasn't been feeling well lately, always tired and looking pale. I'm not sure what's going on. I stared intently into his eyes. Xinxingha's face showed no particular expression, but his brows furrowed almost imperceptibly, and a faint, thoughtful look flashed in his eyes. He didn't respond to the topic of Su Wanqing. Instead, he looked at me and said, in a steady voice, you don't look too well either. The pressure of senior year is intense, but you should still take care of yourself. Your health is your own. His words were ordinary, even somewhat polite, but for some reason, the tightly wound string in my heart loosened slightly because of his simple concern. At least he didn't, like others, only see Su Wanqing's brilliance while completely overlooking my existence. Thank you, Brother Shin, I said softly, then, as if mustering great courage, quickly glanced up at him before lowering my eyes again. Actually, there's something I can't quite figure out, and I don't know who to talk to about it. What is it? He asked, with a bit more patience in his tone. I licked my somewhat dry lips, carefully choosing my words, and spoke with the tone of a confused yet slightly mysterious 16-year-old girl. It's about Granny Chin, who lives by the river east of our village. Brother Shin, you know her, right? She's been blind for many years. Xinxingha nodded. I've heard of her, but recently, many people in the village have been saying that Granny Chin seems to be able to see a little. I lowered my voice, tinged with the nervousness of sharing a secret. What's especially strange is that it seems to have started after she picked up, or someone gave her, a rather old but shiny butterfly hairpin and started wearing it on her head. Everyone thinks it's eerie, and there are all sorts of rumors. I'm just a bit curious and a bit scared. As I spoke, I shivered slightly at the right moment, my eyes showing just the right amount of fear and confusion. I revealed the key detail about the hairpin in a way that fit my timid, curious teenage girl persona. I wanted to see Xinxingha's reaction. He's well-traveled and works in town. Would he have heard of similar things that can't be explained by common sense? Xinxingha listened quietly, his expression still calm. But when I mentioned the connection between the butterfly hairpin and her ability to see, I keenly noticed his eyes darken. Almost imperceptibly, it wasn't surprise, it was more like a solemn confirmation of some suspicion. He didn't speak immediately, remaining silent for a few seconds. People came and went at the entrance of the post office, the noise seemingly blocked out from our small circle. Some things, he finally spoke, his voice lower and deeper than before, may seem like a bargain at first glance. But the price tag hidden behind could far exceed imagination. His gaze fell on my face, carrying a clarity and sharpness beyond his years, yet it quickly receded, returning to its usual calm. Don't be too curious, keep a safe distance from strange people, and focus on your studies, that's what matters most for you. His words felt like a cold wind piercing through my clothes. He definitely knew something, or at least, he was wary and aware of such abnormal events. My heart raced wildly, but I pretended to be frightened by his serious tone, nodding with a naive and obedient expression. I understand. Brother Shin, I was just talking casually. Shinshingha, a cheerful male voice came from the side. A middle-aged man in a post office uniform rode over on a bicycle. Have you been waiting long? Come on, the stuff is at my place. Shinshingha withdrew his gaze and nodded at me. I'll head off now, remember what I said. With that, he turned and left with his colleague from the post office. I stood there, watching his retreating figure, the remittance slip in my palm slightly dampened by sweat. Shingha, just how much does he know? What connection does he have with these abnormal events? Was his final warning just a general remark, or did it carry a specific meaning, or was he even hinting at something? Regardless, I had gained a vague yet important clue. The existence of a system or something similar might not be isolated. Shinshingha's attitude made me even more certain that what I was facing was an extraordinary force with rules, something that could be understood, and possibly even known to certain people. This meant it had patterns to follow and weaknesses to exploit. Over the next few days, while juggling my college entrance exam preparations, I secretly observed Su Wanqing and Granny Chen even more closely, all while repeatedly analyzing Shinshingha's seemingly ordinary remarks. Su Wanqing's condition worsened. She began frequently skipping school, shutting herself in her room all day. My aunt was frantic, dragging her to the town clinic. The doctor examined her for a long time, only to say she had mild anemia and neurasthenia, prescribing some iron supplements and calming medicine, advising her to rest more, but I knew those medicines were useless. Once, when I brought her water, I pushed open her slightly ajar door and saw her facing the mirror, trembling fingers stroking her cheeks, her eyes filled with terror and resentment. In the mirror, her originally fair and rosy cheeks seemed slightly sunken, and her skin had lost its healthy glow, turning somewhat dull and rough. Though the changes were still subtle, far from the rapid deterioration I had experienced in my past life, the trend was clear. Was the system reacting? Was it extracting nutrients from her to sustain itself, or had it failed to complete its plunder and replacement of me, incurring some kind of punishment that affected its host? What truly unnerved me was noticing the change in Su Wanqing's gaze when she looked at me. It was no longer the condescending charity and hidden calculations from before, but had gained a sense of hunger, like a venomous snake eyeing its prey, cold and slimy, brimming with an urgent desire. She was reassessing me. That system must be urging her to find new suitable prey, and I, once marked by it, was undoubtedly the prime candidate. Even if the hairpin wasn't on me, I had to speed up my actions. I couldn't wait any longer. On a drizzly afternoon, the opportunity arrived. My aunt had gone to visit relatives in a neighboring village. My uncle hadn't returned yet from the tea house in town, and Su Wanqing, having taken a sedative, had fallen into a heavy, drowsy sleep. I was the only one left at home. I silently made my way upstairs and stood outside Su Wanqing's room. From inside came the sound of her heavy, uneven breathing. I knew this was risky, but the desire to obtain information overpowered my fear of the risks. I gently turned the doorknob. It wasn't locked. Pushing it open a crack, I slipped inside, quickly and silently. Closing the door behind me, the room was dim, with heavy curtains drawn, filled with a cloyingly strange mix of medicinal and cosmetic scents. Su Wanqing was curled up on the bed, sleeping restlessly, her brow furrowed and a cold sweat beading on her forehead. My eyes quickly scanned the room, the desk, the wardrobe, the vanity, finally settling on the spot beside her pillow. There lay a thick, hardcover notebook with an ornate, patterned cover. It was Su Wanqing's diary. She used to flaunt it in front of me, saying it was filled with her girlish thoughts and dreams of a beautiful future, never letting me touch it. My heart began to race. If there was communication between the system and her, if she had recorded something, holding my breath, I tiptoed to the bedside, moving as quietly as a cat. Su Wanqing smacked her lips in her sleep and turned over, her back now facing me. Carefully, I extended my fingertips, touching the cool, hard cover of the diary, and slowly slid it out from Beside the pillow, then, I retreated to the darkest corner behind the curtains, crouched down, and opened the diary by the faint sliver of daylight filtering through the gap. Most of the earlier content consisted of a girl's vanity, trivialities, complaints, and vague aspirations for the future, filled with disdain for me and a twisted sense of superiority between the lines. I quickly skimmed through until about 3 months ago, when the entries began to change, becoming messier, more forceful. Tinged with excitement and a hidden fervor, almost unbelievable. The voice was real. He said he was a U.S. military plunder system that had chosen me. As long as I followed his instructions, I could have everything I wanted: beauty, health, good luck, even someone else's life. Lingwan, he'll be the first one. After all, someone like him is just a waste of life. The system said I needed a medium, preferably something personal, like a hairpin carrying his scent. The store where I work just got a batch of clearance items, and there's one called Butterfly. I'll try it tomorrow. My fingers felt icy as I continued flipping through the pages. It worked. He wore it. The system said the binding had begun, and the initial plundering would be slow, bit by bit, to avoid raising suspicion. Perfect. I could feel my skin becoming smoother, and when I looked in the mirror this morning, my complexion was glowing. That fool Linwan is still thanking me for giving her the hairpin. The plundering progress is speeding up. The system said it was because I guided it well, making him rely on and love the hairpin even more. His spot in the math competition is mine now. The teachers all say I've improved rapidly lately, with sharp thinking, while he made mistake after mistake last night. Serves him right. Everything of his will be mine sooner or later. As the days went on, the entries became more frequent, and the smugness and greed between the lines were almost overflowing. She meticulously recorded the good fortune transferred from me, and occasional compliment, an unexpectedly high score on a minor test. Even the extra piece of meat her aunt gave her was credited to the system's plundering. Then the record stopped about 10 days ago, shortly after I gave the hairpin to Granny Chin. Something's wrong. The system alerted an anomaly. The binding target signal was weak, and the plundering process was about to disconnect. Stagnation. What's going on? Where's the hairpin? Where did Lin Wan put the hairpin? The system grew anxious, urging me to retrieve the medium or find a new target. Energy is flowing backward. No, my face. This page had several messy scratches and a dried, suspicious dark red stain, like blood from a fingernail scraping the skin. The last few diary entries grew increasingly frantic, filled with fear, anger, and confusion. The day before yesterday, it was gone, nowhere to be found. The system said the medium might have been transferred and bound, but it couldn't pinpoint the specific information of the new target. The backlash from the waste energy is getting stronger. I feel like I'm becoming uglier. No, I have to find a new one. The system said that if a suitable, high-quality target can't be found, it might temporarily draw from the host to sustain operations. No, yesterday, Linwan must have been his doing. The way he's been looking at me lately isn't right. Does he know something impossible? The system said it wouldn't be discovered, but the hairpin is missing. Too much of a coincidence. I tested him, and he acted convincingly, but no, I have to speed things up. The system gave me a temporary solution, very risky, but it can provide relief. On the contrary, it can also mark potential targets. I need to get close. I need contact. Xinxingha, his traits seem particularly special. The system reacted to him. Maybe I can kill two birds with one stone. Reading this, the blood in my body almost froze. Temporary solution, marking potential targets. Xinxingha, what does he want to do to Xinxingha, and what does marking mean? I slammed the diary shut, my heart pounding wildly in my chest, my ears ringing. The amount of information was overwhelming, but it also confirmed many of my suspicions and revealed an imminent danger. Su Wanqing and the system are already desperate. They haven't given up. Instead, they're planning a more aggressive and possibly more vicious counterattack. The targets might include me, and they might even involve Xinxingha. I can't wait any longer. I have to take the initiative and disrupt their rhythm. Before they implement that temporary solution, I carefully placed the diary back by Su Wanqing's pillow as it was, left the room, and returned to my own small, dark room. I leaned against the door, gasping for breath, my underwear soaked with cold sweat. The rain outside was still falling, tapping against the window, the sound urgent and cold. My gaze passed through the blurry window pane toward the solitary adobe house by the river east of the village, looking even more isolated in the curtain of rain. Granny Chen's hairpin, the system, a vague, desperate plan began to take shape in my mind, burning with hatred and a sense of crisis. Su Wanqing, you want to mark a new target, don't you? Fine, then I'll give you a gift you'd never expect, one you created yourself, but one that might end up consuming you entirely. The rain fell all night, and the next day cleared up, with the sunlight exceptionally fierce, as if trying to dry out Yesterday's dampness all at once. In the yard, wisps of musty white steam rose from the woodpile. Su Wanqing didn't get up for breakfast. Her aunt went upstairs twice to check and came back saying she was still asleep, her face frighteningly pale, and she only mumbled a response when called. What on earth was wrong with this child? Her aunt frowned with worry, but more than that, she was concerned about delaying her precious daughter's college entrance exam review. I silently finished the bowl of watery porridge that was thin enough to reflect my shadow, put down my chopsticks, and said, "Aunt, I want to go to the bookstore in town today to look at some more materials. I might be back late for lunch." Her aunt, already irritated, waved her hand and said, go ahead, just remember to come back early to feed the pigs." I returned to my room and retrieved a small cloth bundle from the deepest part under the bed. Inside was the little money I had secretly saved over the years. Scattered bits and pieces that probably added up to less than 20 yuan. There was also a small, blurry black and white photo of my birth mother. I tucked the photo close to my body, stuffed the money into a hidden pocket sewn into my undergarments, and then changed into my neatest set of clothes, a faded blue cloth shirt and black trousers. Though old, they were clean. The girl in the mirror had calm eyes, but deep within them burned a cold flame. Her 16-year-old face was still youthful, yet no trace of the former timidity and confusion remained. Today, I was about to play a dangerous game of chess, with the stakes being my second chance at life and all the accumulated hatred. Instead of heading straight to the town, I first made a detour to the riverbank east of the village. In the early morning, mist lingered by the riverside. Granny Chen's adobe door was open, and she sat on a small stool at the entrance. Holding a worn wooden comb, she combed her gray hair, which seemed smoother than before. Stroke by stroke, the butterfly hairpin was still fastened at her temple. Sunlight fell on her face, and for the first time, I saw her so clearly. Her cloudy eyes indeed held a faint glimmer of light. Her movements were no longer entirely groping but carried a slow, tentative gaze toward Granny. I called out softly from a few steps away. He paused his combing, turning his face toward me, his vacant eyes struggling to focus. It was Wan, my grandmother. I took a few steps closer, crouching down in front of her, making my voice sound full of concern and urgency. "How have you been feeling lately? Can you really see a little bit now?" A faint, almost radiant expression flickered across Granny Chen's face. Groping, she grasped my hand, her grip stronger and warmer than before. Wan, it's better, just a little, hazy, but I can see some light now. I can see your shadow." Her voice caught for a moment. "It's all thanks to the fortune this hairpin has brought." My heart tightened. I squeezed her hand in return. "Granny, have you been wearing this hairpin all the time? Have you felt any discomfort, or heard any strange sounds at night?" Granny Chen was taken aback for a second, then shook her head. No discomfort. Wearing it makes my heart feel settled, and my eyes seem to get a little clearer each day. It's just," she hesitated, lowering her voice with a hint of mysterious fear, "it's just that sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night feeling empty inside, like I've lost something terribly important, but I can't remember what it is. It's very strange." My heart sank. The system's plundering was insidious. It might be siphoning away something even more intangible from Granny Chen, something perhaps more precious to her, like her remaining memories, the vitality of her emotions, or some kind of will that kept her going. If we delayed any longer, it would be too late. "Grandma," I took a deep breath, softening my voice even more, laced with coaxing, "would you like your eyes to heal faster, to see more clearly?" Grandma Chen's withered hand suddenly clenched tight. "I do. I dream of it every day. Wan, do you have a way?" I leaned close to her ear, speaking in a breathy whisper only the two of us could hear. "There's an old doctor from out of town on the back street of town. His acupuncture is especially remarkable. He specializes in treating all sorts of difficult and complicated illnesses, particularly eye problems. But he has a strange temper, doesn't like people, and mostly requires an introduction from an acquaintance, and the patient must be sincere. You have to bring your truest shadow with you." "Truest shadow?" Grandma Chen looked bewildered. "It's the thing you value most, the thing you feel brings you the most luck." My gaze meaningfully fell on the butterfly hair clip at her temple. Grandma Chen almost instinctively raised her hand to protect the clip, her face showing struggle. This hair clip had already become a symbol and a hope for her restored sight. "Grandma," I continued, speaking softly, my tone filled with sincere concern for her, "the old doctor said this shadow isn't to be taken away. It just needs to be held in your palm during the acupuncture, to borrow the energy from it. Once you're cured, the thing is still yours, and your good fortune remains too. Then you'll be able to see this flower, this tree, this sky, truly and clearly." The picture I painted was too beautiful, an irresistible temptation for someone imprisoned in darkness for over a decade. The struggle on Grandma Chen's face gradually gave way to longing. She carefully took the hair clip from her hair, cradling it in her palm as if it were a fragile treasure. Really, just holding it. You'll give it back once I'm cured, you promise, Grandma? I nodded emphatically, my expression utterly sincere. At least, I believed it was. I'll take you there, right now, while it's still early and there aren't many people around. Wait here for a moment, I'll go borrow a flatbed cart too. Push you there. It's not easy for you to walk with your eyesight like this. Good. Grandma Chen nodded repeatedly, clutching the hairpin tightly in her hand. I turned and ran off, not to borrow a flatbed cart, but straight to the village committee. I knew Xinxingha probably hadn't left for the agricultural machinery station yet. I was in luck, at the entrance of the alley near his house. I intercepted him just as he was pushing his bicycle out, ready to leave. Brother Shen, I gasped for breath, my face etched with genuine anxiety. Xinxingha stopped in his tracks, and when he saw it was me, his brow furrowed slightly. What's wrong? Why are you in such a hurry? Brother Shen, I need your help, I said quickly, my tone carrying an undeniable urgency. Grandma Chen by the river, the one whose eyesight is almost healed, she's acting strange. I suspect her improvement isn't natural. It might be something unclean causing it. Now she insists on taking that eerie hairpin to town to find some unreliable folk doctor. I can't stop her, and I'm worried she might come to harm. Brother Shen, you have experience in town. Could you come with me to see her, help me talk some sense into her, or at least figure out what's going on? I translated the anxiety of the system and the crisis of marking targets from the diary into terms that a country girl would find easier to understand. Like being possessed by evil spirits or encountering something unclean, but the fear and urgency in my eyes were real. Xinxingha's gaze sharpened as he stared at me for a few seconds, seemingly searching for any signs of acting on my face, yet, the panic and plea in my eyes were half genuine, half feigned. Where could there be any flaw? He asked in a low voice, concise and to the point. By the river, in front of his house. Brother Shen, hurry. I turned and ran. Xinxingha didn't hesitate. With a long stride, he mounted his bicycle, ringing the bell as he overtook me. I was taken aback for a moment before grabbing the back of his bicycle and clumsily sitting sideways on it. The bike lurched forward abruptly, and I instinctively tightened my grip on the hem of his shirt. The wind brushed past my ears, carrying the clean scent of soap from him and the cool morning air. This was the first time in both my lifetimes that I had been so close to a young man, but in such a tense moment, no romantic thoughts arose. Only the pounding of my heart in my chest. We reached the riverbank in just a few minutes. Granny Chen was still sitting at the door, clutching the hairpin tightly in her hand, her expression dazed yet expectant. Xinxingha parked his bicycle and walked over, squatting in front of Granny Chen. His tone was much gentler than when he spoke to me. Granny, I'm Xiaoshen from the town's agricultural machinery station. I heard your eyesight has improved. Granny Chen looked at him, her blurred vision making out a tall, upright figure. She seemed a bit uneasy. Technician Shen, she said, it's a little better. Could you take a look at this hairpin in my hand? Xinxingha's voice was calm, carrying a reassuring power. I have an elder who used to collect some old items. Let me take a look. Granny Chen hesitated for a moment. Perhaps it was the reliability she felt from the title of Technician Shen, or perhaps it was his gentle tone that lowered her guard. Slowly, she opened her palm, revealing the cheap plastic butterfly hairpin lying quietly in her calloused hand. In the morning sunlight, the sequins shimmered with an eerie glow. Xinxingha didn't reach for it immediately, his gaze fixed on the hairpin, and his expression gradually darkened. He extended a finger, hovering a few centimeters above the hairpin without touching it. I held my breath, watching him intently. I saw Xinxingha's brow furrow tighter and tighter, a flash of cold, sharp intensity one had never seen before flickering in his eyes, tinged even with a hint of disgust. Grandma. He withdrew his hand, his voice still steady but carrying an undeniable firmness. Where did you get this hairpin? Grandma Chen instinctively looked in my direction, somewhat flustered. I quickly stepped forward. Grandma, it was me. I gave it to you last time, but I didn't know. Xinxingha raised his hand to cut me off. His gaze fell on my face, deep and inscrutable, before turning back to Grandma Chen. Grandma, listen to me. You can't keep this thing. It's not helping you. It's harming you. The improvement you're feeling now is being bought with something far more important. Over time, you'll lose even more. He didn't finish speaking, but the implication in his words made Granny Chen shudder, her hand instinctively trying to pull back. But my eyes, Granny Chen's lips trembled. There might be another way for your eyes. Xinxingha softened his tone. The new ophthalmology expert at the townspeople's hospital. I can help you apply for a subsidy, but this thing, he pointed at the hairpin, must be dealt with. How do we deal with it now? Granny-chan and I asked almost simultaneously. Xinxing has stood up and retrieved a flat, shiny metal box from the tool bag on the back of his bicycle. It resembled an extra thick aluminum lunchbox but appeared exceptionally well sealed. He opened the box, revealing a lining of some dark, non-metallic, non-fabric padding inside. Granny, trust me this once, put it in here. He handed the box to Granny-chan. Looking at the hairpin in her hand, a source of both hope and fear, her face twisted with struggle and pain. Ultimately, her trust in Xinxing's inexplicably convincing demeanor and her fear of losing even more prevailed. With trembling hands, she placed the hairpin into the metal box. Xinxing immediately snapped the lid shut with a click and fastened the clasp. The moment the box closed, I seemed to hear an extremely faint, sharp hum, as if from a great distance. Yet also as if it resonated directly in my mind. Almost simultaneously, a piercing, inhuman shriek tore through the morning tranquility, coming from the direction of the village's end, the location of my house. It was Su Wanqing's voice. Granny-chan shuddered in fright, and I abruptly turned to look toward home, my heart pounding wildly. Was it the system's backlash, or was it Su Wanqing's scheme? Xinxing's expression changed instantly. He quickly stuffed the metal box into his tool bag and spoke to me rapidly. Take Granny to the village committee office and find Secretary Li. Tell him I sent you. Ask him to look after her temporarily. Don't let anyone approach Granny, and don't let her come into contact with anything of unknown origin, especially metal or shiny small objects. Understood? His tone carried an undeniable sense of command. I'll go check it out. Xinxing mounted his bicycle, his gaze as sharp as a blade. Heading in the direction of your house. I nodded, and without another word, he pushed off forcefully, the bicycle shooting like an arrow toward the source of the scream. I didn't have time to think it through, quickly helping Granny-chan, whose legs had gone weak from fright. Granny, let's go. We need to head to the village committee first. As we stumbled our way toward the village, the place had already erupted into chaos. Many had heard the scream and were stepping outside to look, murmuring among themselves. It seemed to be coming from old Lin's house at the village committee. Was it their pretty daughter who had screamed so terribly? What had happened? I kept my head down, supporting Granny-chan as we avoided the crowd, my heart feeling as if it were frying in hot oil. Xinxing had gone. What would he see? What had happened to Su Wanqing? That metal box seemed capable of blocking the influence of the hairpin, or rather, the system. After delivering Granny-chan to the village committee, Secretary Li happened to be there. When I mentioned Xinxing's name and his instructions, he looked puzzled, but I still agreed and brought Granny-chan into Li Jian's office. I turned and ran toward home, and the closer I got, the more I could hear the clamor of voices and my aunt's heart-wrenching cries. My Xinxing, what's wrong with you? Don't scare your mother. Outside our two-story house, many neighbors had already gathered, pointing and whispering with expressions of horror and disbelief on their faces. I pushed through the crowd and rushed into the main hall. The room was in complete disarray. My uncle was slumped in a chair, his face pale, his lips trembling, unable to speak. My aunt sat on the floor, holding someone in her arms and wailing loudly. The person she was holding. My blood rushed to my head and then drained away in an instant. My hands and feet turned ice cold. It was Su Wanqing, but she could hardly be called Su Wanqing anymore. She was curled up on the floor, her body twisted in an unnatural posture, convulsing violently. She was still wearing the floral pajamas she slept in, but the once well-fitting clothes now hung loosely on her, as if draped over a skeleton. Clumps of her hair had fallen out, scattered on the floor, revealing a scalp that was pale with an ominous bluish-gray hue. The most terrifying part was her face. Her once full cheeks were deeply sunken, her skin wrinkled and covered with horrifying spiderweb-like black lines, as if all the moisture and vitality had been drained from her in an instant, aging her by at least 20 or 30 years, and her eyes, once watery and deceptive, were now wide open, bulging and bloodshot, filled with extreme pain, fear, and a maddening sense of injustice. She made a strange hee-hee sound from her mouth, her fingers spasming like chicken claws as she tried to scratch her own face, only to be held back tightly by my aunt. She's possessed. She must be possessed. Go find Taoist Lu, take her to the hospital, hurry to the town hospital. The neighbors shouted in a clamor. Xinxing has stood nearby, his expression extremely grave, his gaze fixed tightly on Su Wanqing, especially his eyes. They seemed to be scrutinizing, as if confirming something. Just then, Su Wanqing's convulsing body suddenly stiffened. Those terrifying eyes stared straight past my crying aunt, past the horrified crowd, and locked onto me, who had just rushed in. The resentment, hatred, and a sudden, despairing realization in her gaze were so intense they almost felt tangible. From her throat came a broken, faint but crystal-clear voice, each word squeezed out through gritted teeth, mixed with bloody foam. It's you, Linwan. The system failed. You ruined me." Before she could finish speaking, her body convulsed violently again, and she spat out a mouthful of dark red blood, then her head tilted to the side, her eyes still fixed on me, but the light in them had completely gone out. Ching-ching, oh ching-ching. My aunt let out a wail that sounded inhuman, frantically shaking Su Wanqing's limp body. The surroundings fell into a deathly silence. Everyone was stunned by this terrifying scene. I stood rooted to the spot, my hands and feet icy cold, watching the body on the ground rapidly lose its vitality and turn ugly and horrifying. There was no imagined sense of satisfaction, only a cold, empty feeling of finality and a faint, elusive chill. She was dead, just like that, in such a bizarre and tragic way right before my eyes. What about that system? What does the system's failure mean? The system must have collapsed along with her death, or perhaps because the hairpin was isolated by that metal box. Everyone, step back, stop crowding around. Village Secretary Lee hurried over with a few others and gasped at the sight in the main hall. What happened? Old Lin, quickly, get a cart and take her to the hospital. Hurry. Amid the chaos, Xinxinghe walked over to me, his gaze swept over the ground, from Su Wanqing's corpse to my pale, cold face, and he asked in a low voice, "Are you all right?" I shook my head, my voice dry. "She's dead." Xinxinghe's voice was heavy. "It seems like some kind of backlash came too quickly and too fiercely." He paused, looking at me. "You said earlier you gave the hairpin to Granny Chen." I nodded, not hiding anything. I didn't want to wear it, but I was afraid it wouldn't be good to just throw it away, so I gave it to Granny Chen. I never expected this to happen. Xinxinghe looked at me deeply, his gaze seeming to pierce through all disguises. Seeing the hatred I had suppressed for 2 lifetimes and the calm calculation after my rebirth, buried deep in my soul, but he didn't ask anything. Instead, he said, "I'll take care of that hairpin, dispose of it completely. As for Granny Chen, I'll find a way to help her get in touch with a real ophthalmologist. As for here," he glanced at the chaotic main room and the wailing uncle and aunt, "you should leave for now. Don't stay here. I couldn't have asked for more. This house, every person here, every inch of air suffocated me." I turned and walked out of the door of this home that had once carried so much of my pain and nightmares. The sunlight was blinding. I raised a hand to shield my eyes and slowly made my way toward the village entrance. Behind me, the continuous wailing, commotion, and shock persisted, but those sounds seemed to grow more and more distant. I didn't know how Xinxinghe would handle it or how he would later explain Su Wanqing's bizarre death. Perhaps he would use his own methods, or perhaps the village would ultimately attribute it to some sudden illness or possession, but none of that mattered to me anymore. It was over. Su Wanqing was dead, and that plundering system seemed to have failed as well. My life would no longer be swapped or stolen. But then what? My uncle and aunt had lost the daughter they had always placed their hopes in and doted on. How would they treat me now? Could I even stay in this village any longer? The college entrance exam was just around the corner. Where did my future lie? A sense of emptiness after achieving revenge and a profound uncertainty about the path ahead quietly washed over me. A low voice sounded behind me. I turned around. It was Xinxinghe, pushing his bicycle as he approached. The gravity on his face had eased somewhat, but his eyes remained deep and thoughtful. "Is everything settled?" I asked. "For now, your uncle and aunt have been calmed down. Secretary Lee is helping out." He stopped in front of me, his gaze steady as he looked at me. "What are your plans from now on?" I forced a tired smile. "I don't know, maybe take the college entrance exam first." Xinxinghe nodded, took out a small notebook from his pocket, tore off a piece of paper, and quickly wrote a few lines with the pen he carried with him before handing it to me. "This is my address and the phone number of the agricultural machinery station. If you encounter any difficulties or strange things, you can come find me." I took the note, on which his forceful handwriting seemed to pierce through the paper. An indescribable mix of emotions welled up in my throat. Who exactly is this person? Why is he so perceptive about these strange things? And why does he have the ability to handle them? "Brother Shen," I looked up and met his eyes directly. "Do you know something about that hairpin, about Su Wanqing?" Xinxinghe fell silent for a moment, his gaze drifting toward the distant rolling hills. His voice carried a hint of remoteness. "The world isn't entirely as it appears on the surface. Some things fester in the shadows, born from human greed and weaknesses. I've just happened to witness some of them, and I also have a responsibility to deal with some." He didn't elaborate further, but the meaning behind his words was clear enough. He wasn't an ordinary person, at least not an ordinary technician at the agricultural machinery station. "What about Granny Chen?" I pressed. "She will be properly taken care of and treated. As for what she lost," Xinxinghe paused, "some things once lost, are hard to recover, but at least she can live, see the world clearly with her own eyes, and go on living. That's far better than having everything devoured while living in a daze. His words seemed to be about Granny Chin, but they also felt like a wake-up call for me. I tightened my grip on the note in my hand and nodded. I understand. Thank you, Brother Shin. No need to thank me. He glanced at the sky. I need to head back to town. That thing needs to be dealt with as soon as possible. Take care of yourself. He mounted his bicycle, rang the bell once more with a ding-a-ling, and his figure gradually faded into the distance along the rural dirt road. I stood in place for a very long time, until his figure completely disappeared from sight. The branches and leaves of the locust tree rustled in the wind, and the sunlight filtered through the gaps, casting dappled spots of light. I lowered my head to look at the slip of paper with the contact information in my hand, then touched the blurry photo of my birth mother tucked close to my body, along with that meager bit of savings. The tragic death in my past life and the revenge in this one felt like a long, bloody nightmare. Finally, the moment to wake up had arrived. Su Wanqing and her sinister system had turned to dust, and I, Lin Wan, my life that truly belongs to me, was only now truly beginning. The road ahead might still be rough, and I might still be alone, but this time, my fate was firmly in my own hands. I turned around and took one last look at that two-story house, which appeared lifeless even under the afternoon sun, then took a step forward, walking resolutely toward the main road leading to the town. The wind blew from ahead, carrying the scent of the fields and the unknown smell of the distant horizon. My steps grew steadier and faster. The story of the butterfly hairpin might have ended with Su Wanqing's death and Xinxinghe's intervention, but my life, this butterfly that once had its colors stolen and its wings broken, after enduring the flames, had finally broken free from its heavy cocoon and was about to truly spread its wings and fly toward its own sky. This time, beneath the sky, there would be no more constraints,